They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I often get told that Superman as a character is boring, that he's not easy to relate to because he's too powerful. Well, to those people I say, so what? I've personally never felt this to be a problem, and have always maintained the theory that Superman was never designed to be someone you can relate to, but rather someone you should look up to, which is why I find Superman vs. the Elite to be such a well thought out and fantastic film. In fact, I'd probably go on record saying that it's the best Superman movie made so far. It doesn't crash into the barriers that Man of Steel or the Christopher Reeve Superman films did. As a fan of the comic books, one of my biggest issues with those films is that they often gravitate too far to one side of the scale. Man of Steel was more interested on exploring the man aspect of Superman and making him relatable to a mass audience, while the original Richard Donner films would seem to be more interested on the super aspect and showcasing an iconic figure in a live-action setting. Superman vs. the Elite perfectly walks the line between exploring Superman as a character and exploring him as an icon. It's the first film I can think of where Superman is challenged not by a physical threat, but a philosophical threat as well. If there's something that can truly break the Man of Steel, it's being told that he's doing things the wrong way, and that he's doing more harm than good. Superman as a character is human. He has human traits and believes in human things, and like humans, he can have doubt. And that doubt can be a far greater threat than any green rock or magical hocus pocus that any writer could just jerk out. It's nice to see a film where Superman encounters a problem he can't just solve with his fist, but instead has to rely on his brains. Joe Kelly wrote both the screenplay and the comic book this film is based on, and I may be a bit biased since he's one of my favorite writers in the business, but I love that throughout the film he treats the script almost like it was a morality and philosophy essay, with big superhero fights and explosions. The film is all about exploring whether or not a character like Superman is still relevant in the kind of world we live in. Ever since a certain earth-shattering event, audiences have seemed to develop the belief that heroes who are willing to act as judge, jury, and executioner are a lot more necessary and beneficial to the world than the heroes who maintain certain morals or standards. These heroes are often stamped with the term Boy Scout. I still get into arguments on IMDb chat forums, yes, I know I'm one of those people, shut up, with men and women who seem to think a character like Superman is doing more harm by letting his villains live. This film is completely aware of this mentality, and actually poses a fantastic counter-argument, instead making the point that a character like Superman is actually more needed in this kind of world than any Frank Castle or Wolverine, that in a post-9/11 world, we need heroes who are more willing to inspire us to be better people, rather than heroes who are telling us it's okay to drop down to the level of the criminals they fight in order to get stuff done. If Superman vs. the Elite was an essay, the main question the film seems to want to ask is it okay to kill those who kill other people? Both sides of the argument are represented perfectly in this film, with the Elite practically being a personification of the eye for an eye belief, while Superman being the exact opposite. Superman would make the argument that the eye for an eye law leaves everyone blind, that killing killers makes you a killer, which may seem fine till another killer of killer decides to kill you for being a killer. Killer, killer, killer. Superman's goal in the film is to showcase the hypocrisy and the vicious cycle that many anti-heroes seem to be unaware of, or in the Elite's case, just don't really seem to care about. The pros and cons of each side are represented and explored very well throughout the film. For example, on one hand, the Elite's methods are permanent. At one point, a supervillain called the Atomic Skull escapes from prison and goes on a rampage for the second time through the course of the film. One of the members of the Elite ends up killing the Atomic Skull, and they're right. Now that he's dead, he is never going to hurt another person again. In fact, most of the citizens of Metropolis seem to chastise Superman for not taking matters into his own hands earlier. But Superman makes the argument that his powers doesn't give him the right to be above the law. And he's right. Why should Superman have to dirty his hands? After all, it's not his fault the villains he throws in jail keep escaping. If anything, it's the prison and the staff's fault for not keeping them behind bars. Neither side is more right, but Superman's side is a lot more pure than the Elite side, which is probably why the film ultimately does support Superman in the end. The film is not just strong in its message and philosophy, but also strong as a character study. George Newbern pulls in probably his best performance as the Man of Steel yet. He brings such a caring disposition to the Man of Steel, while also capturing the pure optimism of Superman as a character. During the special features, Joe Kelly makes the point that Superman at the end of the day has to look at humanity and come to the conclusion that on the whole, we're doing pretty good as a species. Whether that's by ignorance or hopefulness is ultimately left up to the viewer to decide. Superman's morals throughout the film are put into question, and at one point in the film he actually begins to worry if the world has moved on to a place where he can't follow. It's a fascinating dilemma he has to face, and actually makes him a lot more sympathetic. Oh, look at that, naysayers. You can actually care about the Man of Steel, and this film doesn't have to break a f***ing neck to do it. The animation is this film's weakest point, and for some I wouldn't be surprised if it was a total deal breaker. In my opinion, the animation and direction is fine, but the character models are just too cartoony. After a while you do get used to it, but I felt that character models more like the ones from the Superman Shazam animated short would have been much better suited to this film's mood and overall tone. The film opens with a cheesy cartoon done in this Rocky and Bullwinkle style of animation that is meant to make fun of the kind of image that mass audiences have of Superman, and it doesn't help sell that point when the actual movie's animation looks too similar to the parody show within the show. If the actual animation and character models were more detailed and polished, then the satire in this scene would have come out a lot better than it did.
A thunder of jets in an open sky, a streak of gray, and a cheerful...
There are also a few plot problems I have, but most of them are nitpickish and don't necessarily ruin the overall experience of the movie itself. The big one being that near the end of the film, Superman says that he's stripping the elite of their powers. Okay, so why didn't he just use this magical MacGuffin technology on Atomic Skull? Was it because the elite were still human and Atomic Skull wasn't? So removing his powers would kill him because the radiation that created him was the only thing keeping him alive. It's never really explained, but like I said, it didn't necessarily ruin the overall experience of the film for me, so I'm just barely going to consider this a flaw. Superman vs. the Elite is everything I could ask for in a Superman film. It's both an interesting character study of the Man of Steel and his morals. It feels like a complete Superman film, focusing on what makes Superman both an interesting character and an iconic symbol. George Newbern is fantastic as Superman, and the other voice actors are great as well. In fact, this is probably one of my favorite versions of Lois Lane. There are a few minor plot problems, and the character models do take a while to get used to, but I do still think that this is one of, if not the best Superman stories ever told, and that's why it gets a rating of damn good. 5 out of 5.